So you get to hear more about my perspective. So I'm going to try not to talk about anything that I just touched on, but I'm going to talk about what we're doing at DHS. And what I wanted to focus on is a few different things. One is commercial generative AI and how we're leveraging commercial products. And then, and I'm going to keep an eye on the timer here, but right now it says 1 minute, so just help me out so I don't talk forever. I'll look at my watch, but okay. And then in addition to commercial generative AI, I want to talk about some of our DHS generative AI pilots that we have going on, and we have a number of those. And then the last thing I wanted to talk about is our DHS AI workforce that I mentioned a minute ago. But before I do that, I just wanted to set the stage. Probably most of you are familiar with, I'm assuming everybody's familiar with DHS, but DHS has 250,000 employees, 22 organizations, 8 mission operational components, and those are very diverse, from FEMA to Coast Guard to Secret Service to science and technology, and a lot of others in there. So we have a really critical mission for all of us in this country, and leveraging AI, I think, really helps us in so many different ways. And DHS has been leveraging AI responsibly, and that's really critical, that in the public sector, we have to leverage this technology responsibly and demonstrating that we're being responsible so that we can continue leveraging it. Because I don't think in the public sector we're going to be effective with the technology if we're not being responsible. So that's first and foremost everything that we do at DHS. So I want to talk about our use of commercial generative AI, tools like ChatGPT, Claude from Anthropic, Bing Chat, which it's very confusing because they keep changing the names of these tools. Like Google's tool was called Bard at one point, and then they changed it to Gemini, and then it generated then they continue to work on it. Microsoft's tool was Bing Chat, now it's called Copilot. But to focus on what we did at DHS is, and I've been in my position since March, so a lot of this happened before I joined, but DHS made a decision to approve the general use of these commercial tools leveraging publicly available data, so being very cautious about how we use the tools, but allowing people to use these tools. So in order to do that, what DHS did is they created a policy that laid out how are we going to responsibly use these tools. They created training to walk people through what are the risks of the tools, how do you mitigate the risks, how do you use the tools responsibly. We created rules of behavior that you have to sign off on. If you want to use the tools, you have to agree to certain things. We created a privacy impact assessment, which is critical to make sure that we've addressed all the privacy concerns. And then finally, we worked with the providers to negotiate federal terms of service. And so that also was really important to make sure that we had terms of service that we could use in the federal government. And then then we implemented that, and we made it all publicly available. So if you go to dhs.gov and you search for commercially available generative AI resources, it's all there. And a lot of other federal agencies have used the terms of service, the training, the other resources, and said on the terms of service, we want this, and gone to the provider and said, we want what DHS has, and the providers have been very open to that. And the reason I mention that is because I think that's smart for us in the public sector to share information, to leverage what we're doing across the board, and to learn from each other. I think that's how we get the most out of what we're doing. So we've been using these commercially available generative AI tools for a while. And one reason why I think that it's really critical that the workforce gets an opportunity to use these tools is because I think it helps get people familiar with how do they work, how can we leverage the technology, and prepares them for the changes that are to come as this technology gets incorporated into Microsoft products or other products, and also helps generate ideas for future use cases. So next I want to talk about our generative AI pilots that we have. So we publicly announced 3 pilots. One is with FEMA for hazard mitigation plans. And so that pilot was focused on communities at FEMA, they need to put in place these things called hazard mitigation plans if they want to get certain types of funding. These plans can be hundreds of, or at least 100 pages long. And for small communities, it could be a challenge for them to have the resources to pull together these plans and get all the information that's required. So this tool helps those smaller communities through asking questions and then generating that hazard mitigation plan. I think it's a great use case because it reaches out to the people that we serve in the community, which the other 2 examples that I'm going to talk about don't. I think that it is also a creative use that could really eliminate some of the challenges in complying with, in this case, a requirement to get funding. The next example is, and I'm not used to walking around, I usually stand behind the podium, so if I'm wandering aimlessly, I apologize. But so the next example is with USCIS, U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, and that pilot is it's actually developed using prompt engineering, and it's leveraging a Claude model, and that's designed to help officers, to train officers to interact with refugees and asylum seekers. To me, that's a fascinating use case. It's one focused on training, and the idea there is when you're a new officer, you get trained already on how do you prepare yourself to engage with refugees or asylum seekers, but that training is limited and it's time bound because it's with people that are coming in to train you. But if you have access to a tool like this, 24/7, you can go into the tool and you can ask questions and you can work with, you can get comfortable with the responses and you can think about how do you ask follow-up questions and then just get comfortable with being prepared to interact with refugees and asylum seekers. So I think that's a fascinating use case. I have since heard of other organizations that are using generative AI in similar ways to do training. And then the last of our 3 publicly disclosed generative AI use cases is with the Homeland Security Investigation Organization, HSI. And that use case is to look through millions of records of investigation and to leverage the power of natural language processing and embeddings and vector searches, vector databases and cosine similarity to surface up information for agents to help them with the cases that they're working. And some of the cases that they're working focus on fentanyl, child exploitation. So these tools can really help them streamline their processes and generate up summaries of cases. So I think that's another great use case. All 3 use different technologies. They're very diverse in their focus. And for DHS, this was about experimentation and how can we learn through this process and then take the learnings that we get from these 3 pilots and apply them across the department. So when other components want to create a generative AI solution, we can talk about what we learned from these 3 and then apply it. And I think we've seen a lot of that, whether it's how do you evaluate the tools, which is really a challenge. And if you have a retrieval augmented generation RAG solution, the way you evaluate that is going to be different than the officer training solution that I mentioned. So we've learned a lot from that. The last thing that I want to talk about is the workforce and what we're doing at DHS to bring AI experts into DHS. We started in February of this year, we announced the DHS AI Corps, which is our effort to bring in a focus group, which will be the largest group of AI experts in the federal government, 50 AI experts, modeled after U.S. Digital Service and other similar efforts that have been very successful so that we can take cross-functional teams and we can have them focus on AI projects across DHS. So we received 14,000 applications for those 50 positions. Some of the applicants are saying that it's harder to get a job with the DHS AI Core than it is Facebook, Amazon, Apple, Google, or others. I don't know if that's true or not, but the numbers, you know, it's very impressive. But what I think is really important for those of us in the public sector is how encouraging it is that some of the best AI experts in the world want to work in the public sector. And the reason they want to work in the public sector is because they want to give back. They want to support the mission. They want to be involved in things that are really important. And that, to me, is one of the most encouraging things that I see in the work that I do. I've talked to people that are coming from, and we've publicly disclosed that we've now onboarded 25 of these AI experts. They're working on projects, things like we have at DHS, we have a supply chain resiliency center, and we had some AI experts look at how can we leverage AI to see how we can predict impacts to our supply chain. That's absolutely critical when you think about things like the Baltimore Bridge incident that happened. If we had AI that could immediately provide us insight into supply chain impacts. Another focus area that and these have all been publicly disclosed, another one is test and evaluation. We've had some members of our AI core focus on the test and evaluation of AI models, generative AI. I think another area that we'll see a lot of benefit, and we can share that across the department. And then the last one is the Homeland Security investigation example that I talked to you about earlier. AI Core is working on that. But I'm really encouraged when I talk to these AI experts, and they're doing amazing things in the private sector that are really important, but they want to come work in the public sector because they realize that, and I think this is true, and I would stress it with this group, and I'm guessing that a lot of you think it's true, is that we're at a different place in our history with this technology. It's really transformational, and AI has been around for a really long time, but there's something different about where we are right now, and I think it's really important that the public sector, the federal government in particular, leads in this space. And I think with generative AI, we are leading in a lot of ways. We are, when you look at what the private sector is doing, they're doing a lot of the same things that we're doing. There's some organizations that haven't yet deployed any generative AI solutions. We definitely have across DHS. There are others that are doing amazing things that we can learn from. So I think this is an amazing opportunity, amazing time to be in the public sector, focused on AI. I think the mission impacts that we can have, the value that we can deliver back to the organizations either that we work for, in my case, or that we support if you're a contractor, I think could be transformational. And I'll leave you with this. I like Shark Tank and Mark Cuban, and I heard the other day he's leaving. And I watch reruns anyway, so I don't know that it will really matter, but it will at some point in the future when the reruns start. He's not there. But one of the things that he said recently, and I don't know why, I've heard this before, and I don't know why when it was Mark Cuban that said it, that I was like, okay, that sounds different. But he said, we need to win in AI, and whoever wins is going to be the leader, the worldwide leader. And what does that mean? I mean, I don't know. And the context that he was talking about was more on the financial side and making sure that we have funding. But I think that he's onto something, and it resonates, is we need to be a leader in this technology, to leverage the technology for good and to be able to protect our interest and ensure that the values that we have remain in place. So thank you for the opportunity to speak to you twice. I hope I didn't bore you. If you ever have any questions or you want any insights into what I see in the public sector, I do have that newsletter, but I feel free to reach out. I've got a lot of training resources that I share with people on how do you get up to speed with generative AI. So thank you.